Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. I am Simply G, and today I'm going to be showing off everything that I got for the month of October 2019. There's a lot here. Kind of coincidentally, it is spooky season, and I got quite a few spooky things. Not just spooky things, but I got a lot more spooky things than usual. And there's some exciting debuts, there's some finales, just a whole lot of stuff to get through. So rather than spend too long on this intro, I'm going to get straight into it, and I hope you guys enjoy. So first up, we have a figure, and it's been a while since I've gotten a figure. I don't order many very often anymore, but this one I've been looking for forever because I have sort of the match to this figure. And that one is very easy to find, kind of bargain binned pretty immediately. But this one sort of just disappeared off the face of the planet after orders were released, and you cannot find him anywhere. And luckily, I managed to find him for the retail price from Yahoo Japan. And yeah, really happy to finally have the Toyworks 1/8 of Yuri Katsuki. I have had Victor. I know a lot of people don't like their Victor very much, but I think he's very nice for what he is. Then again, I'm not super duper picky about a lot of things that I think a lot more serious figure collectors are. But I just love both of them. I love their skating outfits. And the reason I found Yuri for a reasonable price, i.e. the actual price, is because this figure was technically broken. This crystal back here was broken. It had popped out, and it wasn't a hard fix. I just glued it, and it is exactly perfect. So I saved a whole lot of money because I think new in box figures of him are crazy ridiculous prices, $400 something generally, and I wasn't gonna pay that. I do also have the Good Smile figure on order. You guys know that I don't tend to buy multiple figures of a single character unless your name is Natsume Takshi. But for Yuri on Ice and for kind of just the skate outfits and the different pose and their pose, they touch each other's hands. It's just a really nice figure. You know, I'm a sucker for paired figures as well. So yeah, really, really happy to finally have him. And he is really beautiful. I think they did a really good job on the sculpt. The painting is clean. It's not like necessarily to the quality that, say, an Alter or a Good Smile figure is, but it's not bad quality. It's definitely not prize figure quality. So, you know, whatever. I don't generally show off merch, but I did get some. I usually get some on a fairly regular basis in regards to this type of merch, but I don't know. I got 2 of them, and they're here, and yeah, you know. So I got the rubber strap set release for the most recent free birthday promotion. Holy crap, ever since season 1 they've been putting out birthday promotions for the characters of free, and I always get suckered into them. I don't always buy the rubber straps. I do buy just the clear files a lot of the time, but this time I also got suckered into the rubber straps. So we have Natsuya and Now. So if you're not familiar with these characters, they're quite prominent, I guess, in Dive to the Future, which is season 3. They're more prominent in the High Speed film, but that's when they're in middle school. This is when they're in adults and in college. So yeah, I like these 2. These are the senpai of like Makoto and Haru from middle school, when Ikuya and Asahi were on their related, so many characters in free. But we have the rubber straps, and we also have the clear files. So yeah, and these 2 always get released not only because they're kind of friends and close and partners and whatever else. They're from the same section of story, I guess. Their birthdays are also really close. So we have an August 20th, which is coincidentally my father's birthday. And then we also have August 27th. So their birthdays are, I guess, meant to be a week apart. It's just dumb fun. And you guys know I'm a big Free fangirl, so why not? And speaking of Free, we have this book. It was put out as a fundraising effort for the Pray for Kyoani funds, or I guess after the arson. Kyoani put this book out in order to, I guess, encourage people to donate money or to just kind of memorialize the terrible thing that happened and to remember all of the talented people that were lost. So a lot of this is very popular. They're all done by various illustrators and artists who have worked for Kyoani over the years with some of their most iconic series and characters, messages as well. So for me, I really enjoy, I've said this before, I like a lot of Kyoani's works. I don't love all of them, but they're always they're just easy to watch. They're not offensive in any way. They're just a nice time for the amount of hours you put into them. And they're always sort of fulfilling in different ways. And so I wanted to pick this up. It's not expensive. I think it's still available. And yeah, so, I mean, not much more to it than that. On to anime. We have a series that I enjoy a lot. I know the manga and the anime is very, very popular. My sister's a big fan of it as well. I have been meaning to get the anime for a long time, and honestly, this is a series that I wouldn't have ever really gotten into if it wasn't for this most recent anime adaptation. Having read part of the manga, I'm still not super convinced about it. I enjoy it for what it is, but I'm not actively collecting it or anything like that. But this is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, the animation set 1, so this is part 1 and 2, or season 1, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, it's JoJo. It's fun, crazy, bizarre, ridiculous. It's in the title. And again, this is a very, very beloved, memeable, especially, series. And it's just a bit of fun. I found this particular release secondhand from CEX, so it was very, very cheap and in perfect condition. So I was like, well, I've been meaning to get this anyway. I believe set 4, which is the first part of part 4, is just been released here. I can't remember. And I do really like part 4. It's definitely my favorite, I think, out of all the parts so far. I do like all of the JoJo's for different reasons, but yeah, part 4 is probably the most solid overall series, and it's just fun. Just fun. And yeah, I mean, I can't really say much more than that. This is the type of series that if you try to explain it, it's never going to make sense. You just have to convince people to try it. And it's not one that everyone's going to enjoy. And certain parts are much better than other parts. Personally, I don't really like part 3 that much. I like things in part 3, but I don't think that. But that's one of the most popular parts in the US. I mean, that was the only part up until recently that got a full release. Manga-wise, we have just started the part 4 manga releases in English. So we have 1 to 3 in completion, and then 4 is ongoing. I'm sure we'll see 5, 6, 7, and 8 in the near future, in the next 5 years or so, because I don't know how quickly the turnaround is going to be for some of those and how long they are comparatively. But David Productions does a good job on this series, and it's just a great intro to a pretty fun, wacky, out there story. Next is an anime release I haven't opened and I haven't actually watched yet, just because I only got it the other day and I've been very busy with uni wrapping up And this is a Kickstarter release, so that probably tells what it is. But this is just the I guess normal edition of Gunsmith Cats. This is the most recent kind of Animego's Kickstarters. They do have one currently for Megazone 23. And yeah, I mean, this is just an action, pulpy, girls with guns type series. Fun. I believe it's an OVA series. And I mean, what more could you want? This is sort of the quintessential popular anime of like early anime in the West. It's got everything it needs. It's got cute, sexy girls with guns in doing action. I think they're spies. I haven't seen this show, but I've wanted to watch it for a long time. So I do look forward to watching this. This also came with postcards, but I haven't opened it, so you're not gonna see them. But yeah, it's, I'm sure, a lot of fun, and I look forward to watching it soon. Okay, now we can start on manga. And again, there is a lot here. So first and foremost, I want to say that this month I picked up a manga lot from eBay. Someone was selling the entirety of their collection in various different lots, and there was a particular series, which I'm going to show off now, that I've wanted for a long time. I've read some of it digitally and was going to pick it up anyway. This person had almost all of the series that have been released at this point in this lot, as well as a bunch of other stuff, some that I'm not keeping and I've already sold on, other things that I am going to probably be keeping, and some things that I still need to read. So I put an offer into this lot and they accepted. So happily I got this even for cheaper than it was listed, and after reselling some of the titles that I wasn't planning on keeping, like I Am a Hero and Pikachu, etc., I got a really good deal on these books. So this is, there's a lot of them here. So this is Oshimi's Happiness. This is by the mangaka of Flowers of Evil, as it says on the front there. This is a 10-volume series, and I got the first 8 volumes, and it's a vampire series about a teenage boy who gets attacked in the middle of the night and then starts kind of lusting for blood, and it's a really interesting twist on vampirism and all of these things, and growing up, high school, being a teenager, adolescence. Really good. I've read all of these 8 volumes that I now currently own, and I hope to get the final 2 very quickly. So we have volume 1, volume 2, and I'm not going to open any of the later ones because, oh my god, spoilers, and you should read this wild ride for yourself. Volume 3, volume 4, volume 5, volume 6, and volume 7, if I can get it, volume 7, and volume 8, which is the last one that I got in this lot. I believe volume 9 is out already. Volume 10 has a solicitation for soon. I don't know quite exactly when, but it is a really decent series. I don't own a lot of Oshimi's titles. I've read all of Inside Mari, which you can also do legally on Crunchyroll. That's where I read it. I read it probably this time last year, but it is also getting a print release from Dempa Books. I only have the first volume, but I hope to get the rest soon. I haven't read Flowers of Evil just because I didn't really, it was just too unsettling for me, but I am hoping to get his other works that have been licensed, A Trail of Blood, and the other one, Someone Can't Smile, or Doesn't Know Her Name, something along those lines. There's quite a bit of Oshimi being released. Flowers of Evil from Vertical is getting really nice omnibus releases. I know it's very popular. Yeah, so it's a good time to be an Oshimi fan because pretty much all of his work is finding its way to English. And this one is very, very, very good. All of his work is very good, but it is kind of Asano-esque, where it's quite dark, it has a bleak outlook, and very cynical beliefs about growing up and adolescence. But I do think that it's kind of more hopeful than a lot of Asano's works, or at least the most popular of Asano's works. So, you know, he's kind of a complicated creator, and his works aren't really light reads, even though they are quite quick to get through, insofar as there's not always a huge amount of dialogue. It's a very atmosphere-heavy type of manga that he creates. On to some more weird crap. These are books that I got from that lot, and I was quite excited to see them because I like this creator a lot. We don't have a huge amount of his work in English, and this is again one that I'm gonna have to be careful opening because there's a lot of nudity and a lot of like weird, creepy, out there stuff. But this person who was selling a bunch of their manga, or all of their manga, had a bunch of Shintaro Kago work. So we have Industrial Revolution and World War, which is, I mean, you can tell from the cover, is pretty gory, grotesque, definitely the Eriguro style that Kago is known for. And this is a manga that, if I can find a page that isn't just completely disturbing, maybe this one. It has no words, so I believe he sells this on his own website, and so anyone can read it, pretty much. There's that. They also had the entire 4 volumes of Day of the Flying Head, which is another manga that, or I guess Dojin release that, I'm gonna see if that's not too bad, is completely dialogueless. There's no words whatsoever. So all 4 make up the entirety of the series. Again, gross, creepy, body horror, a lot of it. And so if that's not your thing, don't read his work. And finally, for Kago, this one I'm not going to open up because it is messed up. All of his work has that element, but this one is more recognizable, and I think a lot more people know this one and own this one and were traumatized by this one. And that is Super Dimensional Love Gun, the Pretty Girls collection by Shintaro Kago. And this is the Denpa printing, so I guess it's the follow-up, because I think Faku initially released this book. Again, I'm not going to open it up, but this one does have dialogue, a lot of it, but of course it has even more of Kago's bizarre visuals to his manga. It's just, if you're not prepared to see a lot of just like twisted body gore, horror, and just like the most out there bizarre stuff, don't read Kago. This is my warning to you. Avoid his work. Dementia 21 which has been released by Fantagraphics Books, is probably the easiest of his works to get into, but he's not a creator to be taken lightly, to put it mildly, but he is very talented. I've shown this off when I got it, but I actually have a personal portrait I commissioned from Kago. He does do that, and he has so much work out there. Has a lot of his stuff in galleries and just different exhibitions that travel around. He is beloved the world round, and he's very famous and very highly respected, as he should be. He's very good at what he does, but his work is definitely not for the squeamish. This particular volume I haven't finished because my good friend Ray, I already knew to go into it with like very cautiously, because although I do like Kago's work, his stuff can be a lot, and you do have to take it in small bouts. But Ray mentioned to take this slowly, which I have been. And it was a little bit funny, but kind of, I felt bad for her. Our friend, Mama Loves Manga, said, why didn't I see this warning earlier? Because I have read it all in one, and I am messed up now. I'm traumatized. So I'm sorry, Aisha, sometimes that's what happens. I'm sorry that you sat down and read it all. But this Kago, for all of his stuff, is just bizarre and crazy and weird. It still has a purpose. It always has sort of a message, and usually a critique on society that is larger than just like, oh, he's just drawing weird head explosions and all of this gore. No, Dementia 21 is definitely a critique on how society treats the elderly. So that's from the perspective of a carer. This one has a lot more critique on just like women's roles in society and their perceptions around them and their expectations on them. So, there's a lot of good in Kago's work, and that's why it is so valuable, and it does have more to it than just, oh, this is shocking and weird and like how could anyone enjoy this? Which isn't to say that work that is just that, it doesn't have value, but this does have a larger message to it than just trying to freak people out or make you uncomfortable or weird and gross you out. Very, very good creator. I really like his work, and I was happy to get a whole bunch of his stuff pretty much immediately through this lot, because a lot of this stuff, like the Dojin stuff, it is expensive to ship to me, and I don't think I would have gotten it just because price prohibitive on my own otherwise. So yeah, really, really happy. Finally, for the stuff that I got in that lot from eBay is a bunch of more Dojin by Tetsunori Tawaraya, which are, again, I believe self-published works. I can't remember quite. I'm going to look in the back to see if it has. I can't remember the specific publisher, small press publisher that puts these out in English, but we have Crystal Bone Drive, and all of these are in black with silver printing, which is really cool. So yeah, and again, these are kind of like bizarre, weird, highly detailed, sketchy stuff. Yeah, so there's this one, again, kind of like weird monsters. We have Grey World, which, again, this very similar work, so he definitely has a style. And then finally, we have Dimensional Flats, which is, again, just kind of weird and alien and very much what you expect from this creator. So really happy to finally, Holopress. Really happy to finally have these. I've been looking at them for a while. I was aware that Holopress put these out. They don't have a huge amount of stuff, but they do have a lot of kind of indie Dojin works like this in floppies. And they're very nicely put together, obviously staple bound, but just the silver printing on them is really cool. And yeah, if you want some kind of weird alien-esque sci-fi type stuff, check out Tawaraya's works. Next is a book I've been waiting for since April of last year, or I ordered it April of last year. It was supposed to come out April of this year. It got pushed back and pushed back. It got a summer release, supposedly, and then it got pushed back again. And so I finally got it. I know some other people have also recently received this title, but that is That Miyoko Asagaya Feeling by Shinichi Abe. This is a collection of kind of self-reflective or semi-autobiographical stories by Abe, and his work is really very, very intimately internal, like it's very self-reflective. It's kind of the story between him and his girlfriend, later his wife. It's very experimental. There's a lot of nudity, so I need to be a little bit careful opening it up. And Abe is definitely kind of this type of underground indie creator. His comics are very non-mainstream, and they are, again, kind of bleak and dark, and because they're self-reflective, he's quite critical of himself, or the character that is himself. It's a really interesting piece if you like this type of manga, or it's almost gekiga, then pick this one up. This is put out by Black Hook. Yeah, Black Hook Press, which I think are based in Japan, but they are an English publisher. They do have a couple other releases, none of which I own, but I've heard pretty, positive things overall from them. And I've been wanting to get this for a while. Well, I pre-ordered it, and it took a while for them to ship it out to me. But yeah, it's nice to finally have it, to have read it. Again, this isn't a book that is necessarily going to appeal to everyone, but if you like sort of darker, self-reflective stories that are very intimate and kind of overwhelmingly self-critical, then this is definitely a book for you to try out. At the back, you have sort of interviews with Abe himself and sort of just talking about his life and given a timeline. And his life has been quite, I don't want to say unusual, but he's definitely not like your typical just person living life. There's a lot with his abuse of alcohol and his worries about mental illness, his struggles with mental illness. He really got into, super duper got into a religious group for a long time, which broke down a lot of the relationships he had. There's just a lot going on, and this is quite, a lot of this work is earlier stuff that predates that, but you can see how this individual got to that point. And I think he's doing better. I think he's kind of dropped the crazy religious stuff. I don't know. I do believe he's still alive. And so, yeah, it's kind of interesting to see how an individual's life can go on so many different trajectories depending on the choices you make. And I think you see a lot of where his choices come from in how he talks about himself and the other people around him in this particular manga. Next we have another 1-volume series, and this one I meant to get when it first came out, and I think my order was cancelled because the shop couldn't fulfill it, and then I just never got it until recently. But that is What is Obscenity by Rokude Nashiko, the story of a good-for-nothing artist and her pussy. So, if you do not know this story, Rokude Nashiko is an artist in Japan who was arrested, put in prison twice for obscenity, because in 2012, she crowdfunded she wanted to build a kayak that looked like her vagina, basically. She had a model, 3D printing model of that area, and she wanted to blow it up and make it so she was in a kayak, and it was successful. And one of the rewards for that was having that file, that digital file of her vagina, so you could use it for your own purposes. Blow it up, shrink it down. She had already kind of made waves in Japan for her dekoman, she called, which is manko, or pussy in Japanese, and then like decorating them. So you see kind of this, there's photography of some of it in this book here. So she'd just make kind of decorative art pieces with her vagina and other women's vaginas. So a lot of her issues was like, why is this area of my body seen as obscene when we have kind of fertility festivals and gods and like giant penises everywhere, and nobody's calling that obscene? Like, what makes this more obscene than that? Why is the pussy kind of not treated, or is treated as something that's like totally shouldn't talk about, shouldn't mention, where like a penis or a dick, everyone's like, that's kind of like a joke or taken seriously. Like it's such a double standard, and that was what she was calling out. So she was arrested for distributing obscene material because she had that digital file that was a reward. She was in prison for a short period, only about a week or two, and then she was released because there was a huge backlash all over the world about it, because it's ridiculous. Like, the obscenity laws in Japan are so many problems with them, double standards, just completely terrible. And what she did wasn't even like, it's not criminal to do that sort of stuff, or it shouldn't be criminal to do that sort of thing. Sure, it might not be everyone's cup of tea, and it might be like weird, but it shouldn't be illegal to be able to show off that part of your body, right? So she did later get arrested again, and I believe again the backlash meant that she was released. But she kind of talks, or she has her comics about her personal experiences, both in prison, in making the whole thing, in her dissatisfaction with her life, her struggles as an artist, and kind of destigmatizing the pussy. And it's quite, like, I really, really enjoy this book a lot. It is pricey for what it is, and this video alone is probably going to get the whole thing demonetized, but it is very, very, very good. And if you want to read about feminism in Japan, if you want to read about creative freedoms around the world, but especially in Japan, and sort of the people who are fighting judicial prejudice, societal prejudice, this one is a must-read. It's fun and funny, and Rokuda Nashiko is really, like, she's very candid about what she talks about. She has a lot of humor in herself and the whole situation. In the comics, she was laughing and quite pleased in how she kind of forced the police officers to read her statement, which just had pussy over and over and over again. So she made the police say these, like, dirty words that they were all embarrassed and, like, uppity about. It's just a great time. And it's really interesting to see these personal accounts of things that I think people take for granted or don't really think about. So yeah, wonderful book. I've been meaning to get it forever. It's been put out by Koyama Press, and a really interesting thing. So yeah, 2014 she was initially arrested, and I think a little bit later she was arrested again. So recent as well. Like, this isn't in the 80s or something. This was within the last 5-10 years. And that's a bit, like, it's ridiculous. Why are there these double standards? And I think she has a very interesting message, even if you don't necessarily like her artwork or agree with her artwork. There's a conversation to be had. I'll put it like that. And really happy to finally have this book. I don't know why. Again, I think my initial order was cancelled, and then I just never got around to getting it again, which is sad. But now I have it, and I've read it, and I loved it. So yeah, pick up your own copy. It is pricier, but it's well worth it. Okay, now that the literal hail has passed, let's continue with this video. This is a volume 1, a very, very old volume 1 I picked up because I wanted it, because I found the second volume for very cheap. And that is From Eroica with Love by Aoki Yasuko. CMX put out, I think, 15 volumes of this series. It is 40-something volumes long. 70s shoujo, sort of proto-BL. Very well-known in Japan. Not well-known outside of Japan, or at least in the West or in English-speaking market. This is the story of a gentleman thief a la Lupin, and the NATO officer who is following him and trying to stop him. So very, very similar to Lupin the Third. A lot gayer than Lupin the Third. Purposefully, Eroica, our main character on the cover here, is a earl from a country that doesn't exist, Gloria or Gracia, something like that. And he is very over-the-top, flamboyantly gay. When he loves something, he loves beauty, and he wants to own it for himself, so then he steals it later, and he always leaves a calling card, that being From Eroica with Love. He, just doesn't, he's like, I treasure beauty above all else, so that means I deserve to own it. Whereas Klaus, our NATO officer, is very straight-laced and no-nonsense military man, does not put up with any of Eroica's crap. And this is a story that, although it's very long, it is similar to Lupin, again, where each chapter is pretty self-contained, so you don't necessarily have to read it in order. This is very of its time. Look at, the 70s. Oh, wonderful. I do really like just this kind of aesthetic. The 70s were great for shoujo manga, and the Earl is fun, and all of the character interactions are fun to read about, even if you're not super into sort of the BL aspect of it. Poor ever-suffering James, the Earl's accountant, who is terribly in love with him, and he takes full advantage of that. Poor James. But yeah, it's one that there's quite a few volumes that are, the whole series is out of print, but there's some volumes that are super duper out of print. Don't buy them for out of print prices. If you can find this series cheap and it sounds interesting to you, pick up whatever odd volumes you can, because, as I said, you don't really need to read it in order. They are fairly self-contained. So, yeah, it's just nice to have another 70s series in the collection, especially 70s shoujo. Okay, on to new stuff, new releases. We have a couple debut volumes. This first one is from Vertical by Kaoru Ozaki. This is The Golden Sheep. This is a 3-volume series. I learned after I picked it up and read it. Really, really strong starting volume. I think most people know Ozaki's work from The God's Lie. She also had another series that was released as Immortal Reign, but not in its entirety. I think it's a 15-volume series, and it got released in 11 volumes before Tokyopop died. Was it Tokyopop? I don't know. I think so. But this is the story of a bunch of teens who reconnect in high school. They were friends in childhood, and one girl has recently moved back, so they got back together, and they hope to rekindle their friendship, or she hopes to kind of slot back into life with her friends. But as these things always happen, people grow up and change, and you're not really the kid you were when you were like 10 years old. Now you're 16 and you got other problems in your life. This was done really, really well. I think for the type of high drama series that it is, 3 volumes is perfect for the story to be resolved without getting overwrought. Really strong opening, like really, really, really strong opening. It reminds me a lot of Anohana in particular. Those kind of friends meeting up again after a long time, and how they're different and how things can't really be the same and shouldn't be the same way that they were. But really, really, really strong debut volume. I cannot wait for volume 2. I absolutely ate this one up. You guys know I'm not always a huge fan of like very dramatic stories. I do think that a lot of the time they can get pulled into melodrama very easily, but I really enjoyed this one, and I'm probably going to do a first impressions. Maybe I might just wait for the 3rd volume and then just do a complete series review. I don't know. I haven't made my decision yet, but if you have been hesitant about this series, check it out, especially if you like sort of very intense, dramatic, coming-of-age stories like Anohana. The next debut volume is another one that I absolutely adored. I liked the other more popular series by this mangaka, but I didn't love it enough to own it, if that makes sense. I enjoyed it, but this, wow, man, I'm really into this one. This is Become You by Ichigo Takano. This is the creator of Orange. She also has Dream and Sun, which I think Seven Seas also put out. Maybe it was Kodansha. I can't remember. But this is the story of 2 high school boys who sort of are in their last year of high school. One of them, was it their last year of high school? I think so. One of them wants to, he's been playing music for a little while. He wants to create a band with another kid in their year who is a very accomplished musician, but he just doesn't really have the skills yet to be able to play to a level that he thinks is very good. And it's about talent and struggling with that and purpose and what you enjoy versus what you're good at, and the expectations on people with talent. So it kind of reminds me of Your Lie in April in that sense. This one really reminds me of Given a whole lot. If you guys watch that show, and I'm hoping to get the manga because it has been licensed, it's very familiar in that, like, oh, we have one character who wants to play guitar, and then another character, this other character isn't really teaching him how to play guitar, but he's trying to like convince this other guy to find music again. It's really good. It's so good. Oh my god. I really liked this volume. And this particular volume is fairly I don't know, self-contained. This is definitely kind of a prequel-y volume. It lays the groundwork because I think in the next volume we have a time skip insofar as like we're older now and not in high school. I don't know. It's there. A lot of the dialogue is very self-reflective, and I don't know whether that means we'll have a jump in the next volume to later events, or whether the whole series is going to be kind of a reflective one, like Orange was quite reflective, although that had kind of a different plot relevance to that. It has a lot of things that remind me of Takano's other works in a good way. Again, it reminds me a lot of Given, so much, or Your Lie in April, both of those. I really like this main character a lot. Like, he's kind of just the goofy idiot, like overly optimistic guy, but there's something real, like it's done really, really well. I like the interactions between both guys as well as the girl. I don't remember her name. She's really good. All of the characters are very well-rounded and play off of each other very, very well. I cannot wait for more of this, honestly. It's really good. And this is probably the most enthusiastic about a Takano work I've ever been. As I said, I liked Orange. It was very good for what it is. I didn't love it enough to own it. And I haven't read Dream Sun, so maybe it's super duper good and I'm missing out. I do want to read it. I just, again, low priority. But this one, dang, guys, I'm into it. The other book from Seven Seas that I got that was released this month was the third and penultimate volume of Our Dreams at Dusk, Shimanami Tasagari by Yuki Kamitani. Oh man, I love this series so much. This is it's amazing how genuine and incredible Kamitani is able to make their work, and the frustration you feel from these characters in not being understood and not being respected in the ways that they deserve and want to be respected. I know I've heard people complain that it uses slurs, which it does. Like, it uses homophobic slurs and homophobic language, but I think that's more so to illustrate sort of the non-physical violence and sort of the way that words do hurt, and it, even within the community itself, not everyone's going to understand each other, and you are going to hurt each other. That's just kind of the way that life works, and it's really the way to get better is to work towards understanding why people are hurt by things. This particular volume is so good because, and I think I've heard a lot of people say in regards to this volume, really made them reflect on their own actions and ideas and perceptions of the LGBT community and their behavior towards them, their accepting behavior towards them as a non-LGBT person, which is that's incredible. That's super duper wonderful to hear. Because this particular book, you have a character with good intentions who doesn't really mean to be hurting this other person. She's just trying to reconnect with a friend, and because of their long history together, she's not really flexible in accepting how his life is now, and their people around them, their friends, just they might take him seriously, but they don't have an acceptance for a larger LGBT community, and they sort of treat him as a transgender person, as sort of like an illness. There's so it's so good in showing that even when people are trying their best to be accepting, they're not really wanting to be accepting. They're more so trying to look like a good person, or they are trying to be understanding, but they don't inherently understand or have a full reasoning as to the whole situation, and they're not willing to learn. They're not willing to reflect on that and themselves. It's so good. It's so good. And again, you can just feel the frustration exploding off of the page. And so many, one more volume and then it's done. This is a must read. I mean, if you personally are in the LGBT community, I would say you have to be reading this anyway. It is an Own Voices work. It has a lot of representation all throughout the community, not just like gay and lesbians and transgender. We have asexual characters as well as those who are sort of trying to question their sexuality, non-binary characters. There's a lot. It kind of covers a large part of the acronym. And for those who aren't in the LGBT community. I think it's also very valuable to read because not only is it, I would expect, a very personal story to Kamatani and their experiences and their, just what they've seen within the community in Japan and how the community is treated, but it's a very, very intense, personal, human story, and I think those sorts of stories are worth reading, even if they can be hard. And even if you feel like you are the most accepting person and you don't have an issue with people, like queer people, you don't have an issue with acceptance, which is maybe true, but I do think there's some self-reflection in how people treat each other, even if it's not purposefully with an intent to hurt them, that Kamatani brings up, that I think a lot of people who regard themselves as allies need to reflect on. It's just so wonderful. It's so good, you guys. It's so good. And the fact that it's almost over is a sad thing, but I will be so happy to finally have the entire series in my collection. And please, I hope to see more of Kamatani's work in English because they have quite a few and I want them. They have quickly become one of my favorite creators. I just adore everything they do. If you like intense, character-focused series, especially with a queer lens or queer narrative and characters within the LGBT acronym who are main characters, then pick up their work. This is proper representation and it's just done incredibly well, and I hope we see more LGBT manga like this and a little less like some other series that are popular. And I don't want to dissuade publishers from putting out LGBT manga because we need more of it, but this is the cream of the crop, and I do hope we see more of this nature available in English. Because next we have another LGBT manga. This is the end of the series. It's the final one, volume 3 of That Blue Sky Feeling by Okura and Komahashi. This is a coming-of-age romance story, kind of, between two teenage boys, one who's a recent transfer and befriends a loner kid in his class who has been ostracized from everyone because of rumors floating around that he is gay. This other kid finds out he actually is gay and sort of befriends him regardless. He doesn't really have an issue with that, but then he has self-reflection on himself and his own sexuality and his relationship with this other boy, etc. It's very sweet. It, again, I believe is an Own Voices work. It's not perfect. I would say the largest issue is definitely the reference to the fact that our main gay character has had a prior romantic relationship with an adult, which is not cool. Like, guy, don't date teenagers. That's weird. And that they're still like friends. And I think part of that might be because Community is, and I'm not trying to like make assumptions here because I don't know, but I think because of, in certain areas, the stigma of being gay in Japan is still such a thing. It's definitely something that's not taken seriously. It's seen as, a lot of the time it's seen as the sort of folly of adolescence and something you grow out of. I think part of why you do see characters in LGBT manga and BL manga that have relationships or prior relationships with adults is because the community is smaller and kind of hidden, and thus they kind of stick together. It's not an excuse, but I think that's an explanation as to why. But it's not like you don't see any of that. It's just kind of implied, like, yes, they had a relationship and they were dating. So if that weirds you out, be aware of it. But it's a small part of this manga, and unfortunately it is kind of prevalent within manga with gay characters, whether that be BL or Yuri. So, you know. But regardless, it is very sweet. I thought that the actual resolution of the story is kind of open-ended, but in a very satisfying way. And I think it pertains to this trying to figure yourself out in high school, that even though you are sure about something, it doesn't necessarily mean you want to label yourself as something, or you don't know. Like, I don't know how to explain this correctly, but I think it's the process of acceptance and having to go through various steps before you're comfortable with any particular label. And I think that's an important kind of message. And at 3 volumes, you know, it's pretty inoffensive. It's kind of, I really liked the relationship our main characters had with the main female character. She was great. I liked her whole story arc. I liked the friendship aspect of this series a lot, which is really nice to see. I think that's something that isn't valued a huge amount in certain manga like this, because they do focus more so on a romantic relationship. But because this is, I mean, there's a romance aspect to it, but it's definitely like a coming of age adolescence story, so that friendship element is even more important, and having that support system is really wonderful to see in manga like this. So yeah, it was a sweet ending to a sweet series, and I enjoyed it a lot. Next we have volume 3 of Snow White with the Red Hair by Sorata Akiduki. I mean, what to say? This is a fun kind of kingdom story about a prince and a girl who wants to be a herbologist and is training at the castle after running away from her own kingdom, and their friendship and romance and sort of the day-to-day life in the castle and the various things that they have to overcome together. And it's sweet. It's really nice. It's kind of like, it's very obviously a romance story, and the anime, it has 2 seasons, is very good. I just really like the dynamic of all of the characters. Shiroyuki, our main character, she is very capable. She's very aware of what she wants to do, and I think that's great to see in a shoujo manga. Zen is a very likable guy. The other guy, Obito, is fun to read about. It's just like a really it ticks all the boxes, and it's not groundbreaking or revolutionary, but it's just really satisfying in a way that a good shoujo manga of this type needs to be. It has been a long time coming with this license. I said it when the last couple volumes came out, but it took so long for, like, I suspect a lot of people weren't sure that this would ever get a license, especially seeing as the anime adaptations are long finished. And it is a longer shoujo manga. It's at least 20 volumes in Japanese. So it was kind of a long shot, but I think definitely popular enough that obviously it got a license. And I'm really happy that it did. It's likable. I wouldn't say it's comparable to something like Yona, which just comes out on all barrels screaming and just go full power ahead. But it's just really nice, and I don't want to keep saying nice, but it is effective in what it's trying to be, what it's trying to do. I really like the companionship and the partnership between our main characters, and the respect they have for each other, and how they value each other's work and support each other's work, which is just really nice to see in shoujo manga, and our main character, her work is valued just as highly, sometimes even more so than our male character. And it reminds me a lot of just manga that I already enjoy. I really like the show, so it's great. If you want a kind of... It reminds me a lot of The World Is Still Beautiful, which I enjoyed. We only have the anime for that one. But yeah, so try it out if you're wanting... if you're enjoying some of the more recent shoujo manga releases that Viz have been putting out, or other companies have been putting out, maybe give this one a shot, because it's fun. It has the kind of historical or kingdom-y setting, and it's not just like the generic high school romance story, which I know some people do get tired of. So yeah, check it out. Next is My One True Love, volume 23 of Natsume's Book of Friends by Yuki Midorikawa. Oh my god. I mean, I don't know how often I gush about Natsume. Is it probably twice a video? Probably. Regardless, I just love this series so much. Everything about it is wonderful. Each story is so effective. And you'd think that at 23 volumes, there'd be something that's not effective. That's a lie. It's always effective. And it just continues to be wonderful. I don't know how Midorikawa can be so consistently fantastic, but she's managed it. It's beautiful. I love it. It's one that I feel could go on forever, and it still wouldn't be enough. Natsume is such a wonderful character to read about. He's so good. He's just like a good kid and really well-intentioned. He can be a bit snarky at times, which is fun to read as well. His relationship with Nyanko Sensei, I've gushed about in videos, in the podcast. You guys know I love Natsume, and if I can encourage even one person to try it, please do. All 6 seasons of the anime are available on Crunchyroll in the US, and I assume Canada. Only the first 4 are available for Australia, so that's a bit of a bummer. And we do have the movie coming out very soon from Aniplex, which I'm hype about. This is a hugely popular series in Japan. It has been gaining popularity in recent years. It's definitely got a cult following from people who know it and love it. But I want more people to be reading it, because it's really nice to see over the last 5 years in which I've been doing YouTube, more and more people trying it. And I'm not going to credit that to myself, but I do hope that people hear what I say about it when I talk about it and gush and just lay all my love on it and say, that sounds interesting. I might try that. This is the story of a teenage boy who has the ability to see yokai or spirits, and he has been given or left, I should say, a book with a bunch of scribbles in it called the Book of Friends, which used to belong to his grandmother, who could also see spirits. He has been orphaned for a very long age, and because of his ability to see spirits, he's been kind of bounced between houses because he's seen as a bad kid and disruptive and just too much trouble. Now he has been fostered or taken in by a very distant relative from his father's side. He lives in the country, a much more quiet, peaceful upbringing, as it were. But he's living in the same area that his grandmother did when she was a teenager. And so he's been given the opportunity to return the names of these yokai that she had taken. And in doing so, kind of connects with all of the different yokai that his grandmother met over the course of her life, and in a way reconnect with his grandmother, get a better understanding of her and her life, because he never knew her. He never really knew his parents. He doesn't really have a family to attach himself to, aside from his new foster home parent situation, the Fujiwaras, who don't really know much about his personal background either. So it's a way for him to reconnect to his family, but also to accept this ability that he's had throughout his life, that he's really kind of up until this point seen as a burden, and to connect with the wider yokai community in a way that a lot of the other people who can see yokai don't. He doesn't have the prejudices of them, and he didn't grow up in an exorcist family, so he doesn't have this kind of preconception towards yokai and how to deal with them. It's so wonderful. I love it. I cry every time, and it's just fantastic. It's beautiful, wonderful. Read it and support this series. It's ongoing in Japan, and I hope it never stops. Next is an exciting new release, just insofar as we rarely get this series, so it's always exciting when we get a new volume. I am not completely up to date with this series. I'm missing 2 volumes, so I cannot read this one as of yet, but this is Kaze Hikaru, Volume 27 by Taiko Watanabe. This is a historical romance manga about the Shinsengumi. It's about a girl who cross-dresses, pretends to be a boy to join the Shinsengumi to get revenge for the murder of her father and brother, and then later just becomes attached to the Shinsengumi itself. She falls in love with Okuta Soji, who is a very well-known Shinsengumi historical figure. And she just kind of her life within the Shinsengumi, lots of history there if you're familiar with this time period. Even if you're not, it's not really super confusing or anything. And Watanabe is a huge dork. Everything she puts in, she tries to make as historically accurate as possible. But this is a series we only get once a year. I think the actual cycle is probably 8 to 10 months is whenever we see a new volume. And we are quite far behind. I think there's 43 or 44 volumes in Japan. But it is ending soon, or it had just recently ended. It's ending in the next chapter or in the very foreseeable future. And so at 44 or 45 volumes, this series is complete in Japan just this year. So hopefully, not that this series is one that really anyone's heard of, but I do know that some people have just started reading it because of me, which is really exciting. But it is one, if you're a fan of historical manga, especially the Shinsengumi and kind of this period of change in Japan, then check this one out. It is definitely it's a little bit of its age. It's very 90s romance in some parts. Some of the humor I don't necessarily think may have aged well for some people, but it's just kind of goofy and doesn't take itself too seriously in the comedic parts, and then the dramatic parts is more serious and is meant to be taken seriously. It's really, really good. It's really interesting, and again, because of Watanabe's interest and fascination with this time period and her detail and her accuracy of the detail, you do actually learn a lot about this time period and what it's like, what it would have been like to have lived in Japan in various cities, lived in Japan as a woman in this period. It's just really good. Yeah, it's a very, it's a slow burn romance, and when I say slow burn, it is a slow burn. You're gonna be learning a lot about Japanese history, which is always fine by me, and I do hope that now it's completed in Japan. I'm not expecting a super duper increase in volume count every year, but it'd be nice if we could get onto a 6-month cycle. We might be able to see 2 volumes a year. that'd be good. It's still going to take 6 or 7 years that way, but, you know, maybe it's a little bit of incentive to finish up the series sooner rather than later, whilst people are interested. A girl can dream. But yeah, this is just a fun, if you like, it's one that people should try. And if you like stories with a strong female protagonist, if you like slow burn romance, if you like historical fiction, accurate historical fiction, despite the kind of a little bit of reimagining insofar as like there's a girl in the Shinsengumi or hiding in the Shinsengumi, all the actual events are the same. But I don't think a lot of people know about the history of this period or about the history of the Shinsengumi, so maybe that might be a reason to read this. But it's good. It's very good, and I commend Viz for continuing to release this series despite it being kind of a historical fiction josei that nobody's heard of and nobody reads. Thank you, Viz, for not dropping it and leaving me high and dry. Now, to much more popular shoujo, we have Yona of the Dawn, Volume 20. Oh my goodness. I mean, again, I say this every time, but this series just continues to be fantastic. Oh, man. There's a lot of action in this particular volume, a lot of drama, and this particular comedic part made me laugh out loud. Like, it's legitimately really funny. But oh my god, the stakes are high, and I cannot wait for Volume 21. This series, I'm sure most people watching these videos are reading this manga. It is incredibly popular. It's one of the few shoujo series that has kind of bridged the gap to a more general appeal. A lot of people, a lot of manga tubers are reading it, loving it. And it makes me really happy. I'm so glad that we've gotten another series like this that does have a broad appeal, and I think it is helped by the fact that it is kind of it's got a supernatural fantasy element to it. It's very reminiscent of kind of shoujo isekai from the 80s and 90s when that genre was very popular. Things like Fushigi Yugi and 12 Kingdoms. It reminds me a lot of those series, and I think that's why it is so effective. But it takes that formula, it's not an isekai, but it takes that formula and has perfected it, and all of the characters are great, the dragons are great, the not dragons are great, the conflicts are really interesting, the villain, quote unquote, is really sympathetic and you can understand his reasoning behind a lot of the things he does. There's a lot of moral gray area and a lot of conflict, personal and like physical and emotional. It's just so good. And I don't really need to convince people to try it because at this point, a lot of people have and they either know if it's for them or if it's not. But it's just wonderful. It's wonderful and it continues to be wonderful. And I cannot wait to read more. Volume 21 when? This has such a quick release and I still always need more volumes. It's one that is so hard to put down and one that once you start and reading it, you just want to continue. It keeps you hooked. It just grabs you and doesn't let you go. Finally, for Viz manga, we have another debut, and this is perfect for spooky season. One that I have been excitedly waiting for ever since it was announced. This is amazing and it's super wonderful that we actually got this. I can't believe it. Although I will say that I expected it to be a larger trim size. I don't know why, because it didn't say that it would be, but maybe I'm just used to hardcovers being larger. I don't know. But this is The Drifting Classroom by Kazuo Umez. This is the first of 3 omnibuses collecting the 10-volume series. And this is, oh my god. Like, I know people love Junji Ito. He's sort of regarded as the true connoisseur of horror manga in the West. But Umez's work, oh my god. I find his stuff way more effective, way more creepy, way more disturbing, and sort of like stays with you. This is the story of a class of grade schoolers who find themselves drifting in this great unknown, and all of these terrible things are happening to them, and there's no escape. And it's very... There's a lot of monsters, and oh, that boy has a gun. Lots of monsters, and a lot of just like really weird things happening to them, and just the feeling of a nerve that you have with these situations, and you really wonder, like, it's unsettling in the truest sense. And because it's grade schoolers, it's just even more so. Like, what these kids have been afflicted with, or like put to, it gets messed up and weird and absolutely terrifying, which is why I really enjoy Umez's work. Cat Eye Boy is very, very good, but this one is the quintessential Umez work. And it's kind of, it reminds me a lot of Lord of the Flies, but more, because it has a sort of a supernatural twist. It is sort of a survival type of story of the madness of just the absurd, but more so than that, it's the capacity of the human condition and what someone can mentally take before they break fundamentally. And that's why it reminds me a lot of Lord of the Flies, of how much craziness and what kind of situations does it take for these kids who are young, like otherwise normal kids, to just break down and go off the rails or do whatever and make choices. It's so good, and in that sense, like Lord of the Flies, it's meant to be very self-critical on this assumption, like, oh, just because they're grade schoolers, they're not gonna do things. But when you're in certain situations, like that just puts it into your head, and there's really, you can't judge people on certain choices they make in certain situations, probably is the best way to put that. But again, because of their elementary school kids or grade schoolers, it has this other level of uneasiness, because in a series like, I don't know, Battle Royale, or most of the horror manga that we get, it's dealing with teens who, of course, like, you don't want bad, terrible, creepy stuff to be happening to you anyway, but when it's happening to kids, there's really, like, an unsettling sense to it, and you're like, oh god, you really feel bad, because these kids aren't capable of being able to handle these situations, or you don't think, rationality says kids shouldn't be able to handle this, but we know that kids do kind of have to handle very difficult, disturbing things all the time, and the capacity for people in the mind to accept things and to change things is and adapt to things is incredible. So yeah, perfect for October. Really nice that we've got this for spooky season, and I cannot wait to reread this series. Next we have Kodansha titles, and there's a couple here, all ones that I love and I'm super excited about. First we have the finale of a wonderful Higashimura series, Tokyo Tarareba Girls Volume 9. I've called this series probably the scariest horror manga that we have currently, and I stand by that. It's terrifying in how perfectly Higashimura captures the human condition and the fears that people, especially young women, have getting older in society and the expectations on them. I won't say that the series wraps up in a way that is necessarily one that I like. I don't think the choices made are ones that I would make, but I think that's part of showing how complicated and messy humans are sometimes, especially these girls. especially all of us. And sometimes you do make decisions that maybe don't make logical sense or aren't things that your friends would make, but I think because a lot of the series is in regards to romantic relationships and the difficulties of that and how hard it can be to make good decisions when it comes to your emotions is something that I think a lot of people can connect to, and that's something that a lot of people don't grow out of or don't, sometimes that's just how people are, and you can't really make decisions for other people. You got to let them make their own decisions. I don't really want to open this up too much because spoilers, but this whole series is wonderful. If you like Higashimura, you should be picking this series up. I don't know. It's finished now, so maybe get to it. I would say that I do enjoy her other series more, especially Princess Jellyfish, but this is incredibly effective at what it does. I hope we see the second season or the sequel licensed at some point. And I hope we see more Higashimura's work in print, because we have blank canvas currently. But now with this finished, it means we can start another one. And so soon I can own all of her work. And yeah, that'd be nice. But yeah, wonderful, wonderful series. I'm so glad that Higashimura with this series and with Princess Jellyfish really rejuvenated the market for josei works, because really she did. And her mix of painful relatability and biting humor is just so good. And yeah, it's fantastic. I love it. Next, we have another volume that is the penultimate volume in the series, and I'm going to be so sad when this one is over. Oh my god, guys. I have loved every single volume of this, and I don't see that changing by the end. But this is, again, volume 11 by Mitsuru Kubo. Oh my god. Okay, so the way, I've said this before, but this series is totally unpredictable. This particular volume introduces senpai characters who were previously in the club and their relationship with our main, current captain of the club, and just a really, really fun time. Oh my goodness, guys. I've said this before. Please read this book. It's so good. It's about the Oendan at a high school. This boy falls down the stairs on the day of graduation and is given the second chance to relive his high school years. His first time around, he was a loner. He had no friends. He was seen as a delinquent. Literally nobody knew him. He had 0 friends, and he just had kind of a terrible time. In his second try, he really doesn't want to change anything about himself, but he does decide to join the Oendan in his first year, because over the course of his first time in high school, the Oendan went, it stopped being a thing. They disbanded, and he always had it was one of his I don't want to say regrets, but his one what ifs. So he decides to join the Oendan and save it from its untimely fate. And so now he's in the Oendan along with some other people, some who also coincidentally went back in time, others who are just, they don't have any knowledge of time traveling or any experience time traveling, and giving his whole life and the people around him completely different types of stories and realities, and in a sense making them happier and more fulfilled. It's so good. It's so funny. I've said this before with Kubo's work, but I think she is a phenomenal comics creator insofar as her characters are so dynamic, so wacky, and cartoony in a way that only comics can be, and so expressive, so expressive. I just love everything about it. Her characters, none of the characters are really like good people. They all have their major character flaws in a very human way, and she doesn't let them get away with being like kind of gloomy and self-deprecating without trying to fix themselves, which is great. I just love it. I love that she has kind of unlikable characters, especially unlikable main characters, but doesn't show that as a positive thing. She's very self-critical, but understanding towards those characters as well. She gives them chances to better themselves, and it's wonderful. It's so good, and I think a story like this is infinitely more relatable to a lot of teens and a lot of people about their teenage high school experience, compared to something where, you know, everyone's just kind of doing their best. And well, I mean, they are doing their best in this, but I think that the actual personality of these characters are a lot more relatable. This type of cynicism, this type of defeatist attitude, this type of like, why should I be so passionate about something I don't really even give a crap about? It's just really, really, really good. And I love it a lot. Again, I've said that with most of these books that I've talked about, but that's the great thing about buying things that you love and enjoy and read, is you can always look forward to what's coming in the mail because you know that you're gonna be excited to read it, like I am. Finally, for the quote-unquote normal manga, we have Volume 9 of Land of the Lustrous, Haruko Ichikawa. This series is so good. I love it so much. Oh god. It's beautiful. Oh my god, the drama, the suspense. This series just continues to be phenomenal, and oh my goodness, it's beautiful and terrifying, and just there's so many parts of it that make you sit and think and just go, oh. I love this series so much. If you're not reading it, I highly encourage you to. The anime, I'm sure, got plenty of people interested. It's fantastic. The manga is even better. The anime sort of ends at a pretty natural stopping point. I do think there's a second season coming for this series, but what happens in later volumes of the series just ups the ante so much more than what I think anyone ever expected from this manga, and asks so many questions and poses so many really complicated conflicts of who am I? What is my purpose? Those sorts of things. What makes me me is just incredible. The sense of self and just, it's so wonderful. It's phenomenal, amazing, beautiful, stylish, and everyone should be reading it. No excuse. Everyone should be reading it. Starting with BL manga, we have the most recent volume of I Hear the Sunspot. This is Limit Volume 2, which is technically Volume 4 of the complete series by Yuki Fumino. This is a wonderful series about two college kids who become friends and later sort of fall into a relationship. But one of them is hard of hearing. He's losing his hearing. He is slowly going deaf, and the other is not. But he is learning more because of his friend about the deaf community and about hidden disabilities like deafness, and how larger, wider society doesn't accommodate for those things, and sort of the different types of resources that should be put in place to kind of bridge the gap between the two communities. It's really interesting. I like a lot of manga that have representation for various disabilities. This one, obviously, and a lot of people, when they think of like manga with a deaf character, is a silent voice, but I think this one is much more representative of the actual deaf community, insofar as it has multiple characters who are deaf from various different circumstances and backgrounds and motivations, and so you get a lot of different people's stories. It's similar in that sense to A Perfect World, which is a more physical disability that's about wheelchair use. And because our main character, or one of our main characters, he has only recently started losing his hearing after an illness, but we do also have other characters who are born completely deaf, or others with much more severe hearing loss, those who have been in the deaf community their whole life, those who aren't deaf but have deaf family members and thus have grown up around the deaf community or learning sign language or speaking with sign language. It's really interesting. It's really wonderful. If you want more, like, it is a slow burn, and I think that might frustrate some people who just want kind of a quick love story, and our characters, they don't communicate as, like, maybe that's kind of part of the joke, but they need to communicate more, and I think that's part of their issue. But I think there is a realistic conversation about how disability impacts relationships and how it can affect those who have a disability with their relationship with other people and how they feel, their confidence going into a romantic relationship. I don't know. It's something that comes up in Perfect World as well, because for someone who doesn't live with a disability or hasn't grown up around it, it is something that needs to be learned about. Like, you can't just expect someone to jump in and be able to know everything about it and completely accept everything about it, which is why I think there's a trepidation and sort of this conflict with like how these characters interact. And I think with this, that can frustrate people if you're wanting just like, no, just get it over with. Like, why can't you just talk and then, work things out? But sometimes people just don't do that. But it's very, very good. And I'm super happy that One Piece Books is putting it out. And I want more. Please. Fumino. Please. Especially because this kind of ended on a cliffhanger, and I really want more. Finally, for manga, we have, or BL manga and manga in general, we have Melting Lover by Bukuro Yamada. This is the first of Kuma Publishing's books that I have bought, although I have many of their prospective titles on my list because I'm excited about it. If you're not aware, this Kuma is a new publishing imprint from Faku, who is a hentai publisher, who obviously focus on hentai, which is heterosexual erotica. Kuma is their like LGBT or queer imprint, so focusing on BL and Yuri, I would expect generally erotic content, but this particular book isn't that like erotic. There's sex in it. It's a collection of short stories, but it's not any more erotic than like a typical BL volume of short stories. There's maybe a little less censoring, but I didn't notice anything like super like there's not like a lot of uncensored dick in this. I don't know whether that's just the artist's style or just their because it's one of their first publications. I don't know. And it doesn't have like a huge amount more sex than like a typical BL volume either. There's a lot of story to this series as well. And they're all kind of like weird little sci-fi or like unusual types of books or stories. There's a lot of There are implied non-consensual sexual relationships in one of this story, but that's like a point of like villainy. It's not meant to be good. It's not between our romantic interests, if that makes sense, but be aware. There's also like the last chapter is is pretty weird. So there's let me check. There are 4 major stories in this. So we have Melting Lover, which is the title story, and it's this guy who has like this creepy stalkerish love for his senpai from college or whatever, obsessed with him. One day he discovers like this gloopy gelatinous substance on his balcony or like close to his house, and it goes into his bedroom and it becomes his senpai. So it like becomes this gelatinous life form, copies all of the data and like the photos, and becomes like a perfect copy of this guy's crazy love. And so it's their relationship and him trying to like break away from his weird stalker obsession with this other guy, who doesn't even really know he exists, that type of thing. The second one is Bottom of Heaven, which really isn't like, I don't even remember if that one has any sexual content in it, right? So that one is about a hitman who is followed around by an angel, and so there's that, and it kind of has a bit of a twist to it. And then the third story is the longest one, something, I can't remember quite the name, but it has something to do with the circus. That one does involve if you like Coyote, you'll probably like this one. That's all I'm gonna say. So it does have elements of Coyote in it, and it's not the gangster elements, let me put it that way. But it also has, just as a warning, implied non-consensual sexual relationships of authority and intimidation. Not between our characters who are like meant to be in love, but that's an aspect in it, so just fair warning if you don't like that. And then the last story is probably the weirdest and like one that I think is probably the most polarizing, but it's a future world. Okay, I've talked like, this is years ago now, but I talked about a short story collection in Fumi Yoshinaga's BL stuff that is Don't Say Anymore, Darling? I think it's that book where there's the sex robot. Okay, this is like the opposite of that. Well, no, it's kind of the same but the opposite. But this is a future in where AI and androids and that have taken over as the dominant species in the world, and humanity has like kind of devolved into, and they're now humanity is just kept as like pets for these androids, but like generally like living life forms don't really exist a lot, and people don't really have pets. Well, I say people, these androids don't really have pets. They act exactly like humans, but they're just are androids, and they're a lot more efficient, and they obviously have programming and whatever else. But this guy, he has a pet human, I say young boy, he's probably like, I want to say 20. I'm gonna be generous. He's just like a youngish guy, 20 odd, who is his pet, and these humans, they've been raised as pets, so they don't really know language. I don't know whether or not like just humanity's brains devolved or whatever. I don't know. They're just very simple and like looking for affection. They're like dogs. People are now dogs in this world. But again, a lot of people don't, or a lot of these androids don't have pets or whatever, because it's expensive and you have to look after them, and because they're alive, they can die easily, which androids don't understand. Or, I mean, they understand, but they don't die, so they don't understand. And so it's like his relationship with his dog, or with his pet human. And so, yeah, that's what that series is. But none of these stories are that sexual. Like, there's sex in 3 out of 4 of these stories. Maybe 4. I don't remember if there's sex in the angel one. Maybe, but really not a lot if there is. There's sex in the longest one, which is the circus one. And that's probably the main reason to read this book. It's an oddity. Like, it's got so many weird elements to it. But, hey, I'm happy. Like, I don't care. I don't mind some weird shit every once in a while. I don't read this, like, I didn't read this book expecting to be like, oh man, that's so sexy. But I wanted to see what kind of titles Kuma are putting out, and I hope to support a lot of their titles, because a lot of them interest me. And this one, beautiful, beautiful print quality. Oh my god, so high quality. Faku, I don't talk about and I don't buy from because I don't really have an interest in hentai, just in general. But from everything I've heard, they're a wonderful company who treat their workers well, who treat the artists well, who have really high quality books. And considering they're a publisher who only publishes hentai, that's amazing. Like, that's a really cool thing. So I wanted to support them on this project. I think it's important that we do have a publisher that's putting out LGBT erotica, because that's not something that that's definitely a gap in the market, especially uncensored erotica like Faku does. They ask artists to decensor their works because obviously the US and outside of Japan, we don't have the obscenity laws that Japan does. So yeah, like it's just a kind of an exciting development. Yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of Kuma publishing books that I'll be picking up in the future, but so far there's only been their other main like launch title that I know people have already bought because of conventions and stuff hasn't been yet released in like wider publication, but I have actually ordered that one as well. That one's cross-dressing and other stuff. So yeah, it's not like erotica is always gonna be just like very specific to the people who are reading it, and you're either into it or not. But again, I like to support publishers like this. I like their kind of values and what they want to be doing. And there are other titles that they've announced, like Canis. I'm actually really looking forward to. So yeah, check this one out if my description of it sounded interesting, or if you don't mind like really weird, kind of out there short story collections, even that have erotic content, kind of. They're really good. If you could handle the sex robot in Fumi Yoshinaga, you can probably handle this one. But yeah, it's done well, and it's a beautiful little book. So that is everything that I got in the month of October. There's a lot. I mean, I kind of got more than I expected, mainly because of that eBay lot. I caught up on some older titles that I've been meaning to get. I say, even though there's been like 1 or 2 of those. And there's been a bunch of exciting debuts, a bunch of exciting finales, and a couple of interesting little oddities mixed in there as well. Let me know your thoughts on any of the titles that I talked about today. If you're reading any, if you love or hate any of them, I'd love to hear. If you're excited about the new Drifting Classroom release, let me know your thoughts. If you're reading something like Kaze Hikaru or The Golden Sheep or From Iroha with Love, I'd love to hear about it. How did you feel about the ending of that Blue Sky Feeling? What did you think about the beginning of Become You or The Golden Sheep? I want to know your thoughts on Shintaro Kage as well, or Shinichi Abe. That would be, I'd love to hear about that. Or if you want to talk about any of the anime, although I only got 2, let me know your thoughts on Gunsmith Cats. I've only ever heard good things, so I'm expecting it to be good, but that'd be good to know. And if you think I was super lucky to find my skating boy, which I was super lucky to find my skating boy, he's so beautiful, and I'm so happy to have him. But yeah, let me know what you guys picked up this month, whether any of these titles interested you, whether what I said made you want to try them for yourselves. I'd love to hear that. And until next time, I am Simply G. I'll catch you in the next video. Bye till then.